System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left. TMK for Inner City Left. Today is June 14th. I am here with Emoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Emoja, was good, bro?
Man, we still live.
Yeah, you say that every time, and for good reason.
Cause I'm amazed, you know what I'm saying? Happy. You know what I'm saying? They
No,
all good days when you got them.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Especially if maybe you're in Saudi Arabia right now. I want to talk a little bit about this. Was huge news. Obviously not being covered in the Western world, the American Western world, unfortunately, just like the proper discussion about the war in Ukraine and many other things. He sometimes say everything that comes out of the State Department is a half truth. But with that being said, I want to talk to you about this. Saudi Arabia's petrodollar exit, a global finance paradigm shift, a crucial decision not to renew this contract enables Saudi Arabia to sell oil and other goods in multiple currencies, including Chinese RMB, euros, yen, and yuan. Significant financial upheaval is potentially ahead. Can you tell everyone a little bit about the petrodollar, why it's important, and why it's such a big deal that the Saudis are not renewing this 70-year, 50-year, it depends on who you ask, contract?
Yeah, India Today says the petrodollar deal has been an 80-year deal. You know what I'm saying? So everybody has a different kind of feel for it. But what we all acknowledge is for a very long time, the American dollar dominated the oil trade. It accounted for it. So the United States dollar still accounts for about 90% of currency trading because so many countries have so much of their international reserves backed by the dollar. They had to do it because, again, for most of the last 80 years, you could not buy petroleum. If you can't buy petroleum, your economy doesn't exist. Like renewables are just not there yet. Nuclear is not there. Whatever you feel about these things, the world economy is still fueled off petroleum.
No pun intended.
Right. And so if you can't buy petroleum in dollars, you can't buy petroleum, which really limits your ability to grow the economy, right? Because petroleum touches every aspect of your economy. Fuck what you heard. Petroleum is the tax on your job. You know what I'm saying? Before even the IRS get it, you got to give it to big oil because how are you going to even get to your job without petroleum, right? But the thing is, this trade, it's only really kind of in name only. They're making something a formal thing. They're not they're no longer renewing this thing, right? But in 2023, only 1/5 of all oil trades were reportedly made in non-US dollar currencies. You know, only 1/5. That's in 2023. So essentially 80% of the entire world needed dollars. Okay, 80% of all petroleum was bought in dollars. So why is this dangerous? It's dangerous because of the way the United States has been utilizing the dollar as a weapon of war, right? Creating unilateral sanctions, telling other nations, you're going to be on a list if you trade with these countries. Even right now, you have the G7 leaders, right, who just agreed to use $50 billion in Russian assets, right? Because Russia has in the international system $700 billion in reserve currency held by the Americans and the European banks. Because of this conflict, the Americans have just frozen that money. They're like, they can't find a way to steal it outright. So what they're doing is all of these legalistic things, right? They're saying, well, the interest that you would be getting off that money, that you're not due that. So they're giving the interest off the $700 billion of Russian assets that they have. They're just giving that to Ukraine, right? As if it's their right. Other countries are looking at this. The BRICS countries are looking at this. No one wants to, in the hood, man, $100 going to get missed. Internationally, how is a country supposed to miss $700 billion. So other BRICS countries are like, how can we prevent this from happening? And what they've decided to do is to start de-dollarizing. It's funny because it's the exact opposite of what the United States and the Europeans were talking about as it relates to China, talking about de-risking, right? Decoupling. Well, that's literally what BRICS is doing. They're taking away the risk of the United States and the European banks, just freezing their money, just saying this is not your money anymore. You can't have it by trading in the international currencies of the countries that they're dealing with, which, by the way, makes sense. Russians should buy Chinese international goods with Russian currency or with Chinese currency. It doesn't make sense that the United States has been this reserve currency all around the world for so long, to the point where if Russians wanted to buy Chinese goods, they had to buy them in dollars. Nothing about that makes sense. And so BRICS is just consolidating this once again because what it does is it's a soft power way of taking away the hegemonic power of the United States of America. And the other thing it does is it moves you much faster towards this financial collapse that's going to happen because the reason why Americans are able to run these trillion-dollar deficits all the time is because the world has to accept it. Because the dollar is the most accepted, least questioned currency in the world, even though it's not technically backed by anything. It's backed by the promise of the federal government. Well, beyond that promise was always at least the petrodollar. But now that's gone too, right? You can buy oil without having dollars. And that, again, it's just one more way that nations are protecting themselves from the way that the West and the United States banking systems have outright stolen their money.
How does this affect the United States economy?
I think it affects the American economy if you lose that bully pulpit, right? It's gonna get a lot harder to start getting. First off, the United States is going to reach a point of insolvency that's beyond something that you can reconcile, right? And this happens. The system keeps happening, keeps crashing, right? In 2008, the system crashed, right? Obama came in and reconciled it. He gave the banks all, I mean, just a cash injection and allowed them, to take everybody's homes, right? So this is another bubble that's going to happen. This dollar speculation saying that, the American government can run these huge $1 trillion deficits every 3 months, something like that, right? You're no longer going to have enough dollars. There already isn't enough dollars in circulation to cover this debt, but now it's going to become more obvious, and it's going to work until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's going to crash extremely hard, right? There's nothing left as a reserve. There's no backstop. Petroleum was the backstop forever. People have to buy petroleum. And so since you have to buy petroleum in dollars, there'll always be dollars in the international market. You don't necessarily need that anymore. And because of that, the dollar has lost one of its last soft power backstops. Now, again, there's always the potential that they just utilize the military. We renege on all these payments. We're not paying, whatever. Sanction me with your armies, right? But what you're doing then is you're destroying the global economy. I mean, that's gone. The whole, if the Americans welch on their debt in this way, um, look, civilization will change. I have no idea how we will reorganize ourselves, but it looks like even a faster pivot to the BRICS, right? Because it's going to look like one more time the Americans have tricked us, right? We did everything we said we are going to do, and now the Americans can't pay back these debts. Their currency is worthless. We may as well trade with Russia. May as well trade with Brazil. May as well trade with South Africa. May as well trade with China. Um, yeah, I mean,
So
and yeah,
this isolation, obviously, there's some numbers coming out of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, also known as OECD. Data just came out.
mm,
Um, big winners this Q1: China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, aforementioned Saudi Arabia, Korea, Indonesia. Countries that are down: United States, Japan, South Africa, UK, Germany, No European countries appear in the top five, and Russia now moves up to the top three. Um,
In terms of purchasing power, yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of
purchasing
purchasing
power
power,
parity, yeah, seems
uh,
to be.
yeah, I guess this is again, maybe this is global Bidenomics, right? This is what
Yeah,
that is.
and what that is, again, that's that when we talk about purchasing power parity, what we're talking about is standard of living. What does it cost for the average citizen to go and get some butter, to get some milk, to pay their rent, right? And so the fact that Russia's status of living has now went over Japan's, I mean, that was absolutely not supposed to happen with the sanctions. The sanctions were meant to debilitate and cripple Russia and force them back to the bargaining point, before even the military aspects of this Ukrainian adventure. They expected financially they could bring them, and that's just not what happened. What happened was you forced Russia to become self-sufficient to get off the SWIFT system, and essentially they inoculated themselves against the virus that is the volatility of the inherent Western capitalist system. It's ironic.
Just like another country in which they had a flotilla just visit in Cuba, another the most, maybe possibly highly sanctioned country in history. I wanted to talk to you about this. I think this is right on it. Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, has turned down an invitation to the G7, citing that he has to get ready for the Hajj. You were talking about the writing on the wall with BRICS and the sort of the Western world just kind of falling. Is this another example of that?
Well, let me ask you, my Muslim friend, where does the Hajj take place?
Takes place in the city of Mecca
In what country?
in Saudi Arabia,
And Mohammed bin Salman is the presumptive leader of where?
Saudi Arabia.
I mean, hey, look, man, I want to come over, man, but look, I gotta go to my house. It's gonna take me I mean, that's look, I don't mean to disparage his religious sincerity if that's what it is. It's just the Hajj is something that a Muslim person can take upon themselves at any time in their life, right? Is there like only one time of the year that these things are done?
Yeah, there is a specific time where it happens, but again, it's not a preparation. Obviously, he's been there several times, um, and I think again, it's sort of just a play on his relationship with Islam and playing to that base of like, I'm not going to go join these G20 leaders, the mainly Christian white people or at least non Muslims. And, I'm going to cite this. And everyone who is in on it and understands, like you said, we can't ignore the fact that um, these quality of life Q1 earnings are all leaning towards the global majority. It's all leaning towards BRIC. None of it is leading toward the G7 or the G20 at large. And yeah, it's just a little slap in the face. And again, you just kind of
Yeah,
playing.
it's a very weak excuse. I can't come out to play. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but at the same time, like, what's the point of him going to G7, right? Like, it's so ironic that he's in this place where he's positioned himself beautifully. We talk a lot about Erdogan and Turkey, how they're in NATO but they're not in EU. They're kind of this bridge for the East and the West. Often they're the go between NATO and Russia. Sometimes they're the lion of the Muslim world, the shield and the sword, right? You can't really pin him down. That's the thing about Erdogan. Mohammed bin Salman has proven himself to be at least as clever, at least as cunning. He's able to walk through all of these worlds, right? That in ways
He
that
had to
you
beat out like 30 other people to be the king, to be the crown prince.
real Game of
That's
Thrones
how
stuff,
it goes. And that's a fact.
real Game of Thrones stuff.
But not as violent as the white people, though.
When there it is,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
like
to mention the Turkey just signed this F-16 deal. Did you see this 23 billion?
I
So
did.
yeah, I mean they're playing both sides because they need to survive. And
It's
that's what the Saudis are doing. They're trying to play whatever side will help them win. And I can't fault a sovereign nation for doing that.
Yeah, I don't want to fall too far off this track with Turkey, but they're fascinating to me because they already have fourth generation planes that they develop internally, right? I mean, it's the most by all accounts, the most capable land army in all of NATO, the United States included. This is a contemporary military that is quite disciplined. They are battle hardened from all of the conflict with ISIS, with the Kurdish militant groups, right? With the Syrian civil war. Like these are blooded and good troops, right? So the fact that they've been trying to get these F-16s from the Americans forever, a plane that we've talked about on the show many times, it's not like it's cutting edge or brand new. It's just this thing that Erdogan always does, where he's like, prove to me that you see me as one of you, right? And the Europeans and NATO never fail to prove that we don't see you as one of us, right? I mean, what
It's
do we hear?
almost like there's not enough white people in this country.
You
Not enough, yeah, yeah, too many non Christians in there.
right.
Even though there was lots of white people and lots of Christians there.
When you hear about F-16, you hear about F-16s going to Ukraine, not to Turkey. And the thing is, I don't think Turkey even needs them. Like I said, they have their own aviation industry. It's actually quite advanced. They're working on unmanned fifth gen fighters. I mean, really, really amazing stuff. It would shock you if you
So
were looking
why do they take the F-16?
to
What's
see
what's
if the Americans will do it. I really can't see any other thing. It's like, hey, once you say you my friend, won't you sell me this thing? And the Americans always say they will, and they never do. You know,
Yeah, they got to sweeten it for Turkey because, like you said, I mean, obviously Turkey is, unable to be in the EU, which they begged for not begged, but asked for several decades, and now they're working towards the BRIC situation, and I
they
think that just
really
again brings it all the way around.
have been promising them these F-16s for the better part of a decade, right? They promised them once again for Turkey's vote, right, to bring in Sweden and what was it, Finland or Sweden and Norway, right, to bring them into the entire NATO alliance. So once again, right, this is the United States reneging on something they promised because Turkey had huge reservations about Norway and about Sweden joining because they do things that really offend the Turkish population, like burn Qurans, just to be provocative, right? So, like these are things that, and they have given material support to people that are presumed to be Kurdish terrorists. Whether you see them as Kurdish freedom fighters, Kurdish terrorists. The PKK in Turkey is absolutely registered as a terrorist organization, and Norway and Sweden have provided material support to those people on many occasions, right? So like they had to sweeten that pot for them, and once again, the Americans are proven unreliable. These are the kind of things that push Turkey towards the whole BRICS thing. It's just so many times where if you don't do what the United States says, they'll destroy you. If you do what they say, they almost do what they say they'll do. They'll do it when they get ready, but sometimes they never get ready.
I want to keep going down this trend of uh, global majority countries moving away from the G7 Western countries. Vladimir Putin ratifies trade agreement. I know you've heard of the EU. What about the EAEU and Iran? Tehran and Moscow have significantly increased ties over the past several years in a joint bid to overcome unilateral Western sanctions. Have you heard about this?
No, no, no. This is
So
news.
let me tell you a little bit about this. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is in the Cradle. Hey, check the Cradle out. They're really good. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed off in a law ratifying the free trade agreement between the Eurasian Economic Union, also known as the EAEU, and Iran on June 12th. The agreement seeks to reduce or eliminate tariff or non-tariff barriers in trade to foster economic cooperation between the five-member EAEU and the Islamic Republic. Can you just react to that? Just another kind of straw on the back of
Right.
Western capitalism.
To me, it looks spicier than it is. I mean, it is, of course, a little bit of a pluck at the West. But I mean, it's important to remember that Iran and Russia are regional neighbors and they do a lot of business together. So it makes sense to make it easier to do those things, right? And it's so funny because these are the things that the Americans once said they were into, right? Free trade, tariff free, I'm sorry, tariff-free goods going all around the world, and just letting the best products compete. That's what's happening here, right? I'm gonna tell you another thing it does though is it makes it easier for those workforces to become part of the Russian workforce and vice versa. I can see all kinds of applications for that as far as like making it easier for people to join the Russian military or sign on for a tour of duty with the military. Um, it frees up Russians to join the military themselves because you know that you'll still have an influx of people coming into the Russian industries to be able to keep their industrial engine going. So all of that is good, man. I mean, you want to trade with your partners. America's largest trading partners are Mexico and Canada. It makes sense. You share a border with them, you know. So yeah, to me, it makes sense. These are regional partners. It's going to look spicier than it is simply because of who it is, Russia and Iran, and everything feels a little bit sinister. You know, oh, they're plotting. But really, they're just doing business.
Yeah, they're standing on business. They're doing good business,
Yeah, it is.
which is why people are not trying to rock with the West. I just want to ask you this last thing. We can wrap up here. Like you said, basically every, what did you say, like 4 months, we're going into $1 trillion worth of debt. Obviously, Ukraine is spending all of the, or many of the reserves, not to mention Israel and potentially Taiwan. You have this very volatile election coming up. Not to mention, and we're talking about the Saudis removing themselves from the petrodollar. You also have this huge national debt crisis. I think it's over 28 trillion right now, and the bond crisis coming up. Yeah, we see the stock market consistently going up, breaking records. Why does the stock market go up? But it looks like in every other indicator, the United States and the Western economies are down.
Yeah, because again, right, we've talked about this before. The United States major product is speculatory, financial, deregulated, derivative based growth, right? It's not real growth. It's all based upon the assumptions of what these companies are worth. And it's always easier so long as you meet your quarterly earnings to revise what those stock figures look like, and always up is a good thing. Again, ironically, it was Obama that really made this a thing, right? He's the one that came in and changed the law after Enron failed and all of those things, and made it much easier for this kind of speculation to take place. And it moved right the weight of the American economy off of real estate and that bubble into the speculative stock and derivative market, right? So like again, this is Democrat stuff, which is funny because again, they portray themselves as this party of the people, of the working man, but they've done better service to Wall Street than the Republicans have really consistently over the past 30 years.
Yeah, this is just another article. I know we about to get ready, but I think this is really important, and I think it's at a crux of what's going on with the United States economy. GM had $6 billion to spend on next gen EVs, but they chose stock buybacks instead because that's the higher Q earning for your stockholders and your board, your chair, or whatever it may be. You're being able to give these CEOs huge bonuses instead of taking that $6 billion and investing it. And
In
we're
your
talking
future.
about, and yeah, exactly. We're talking about the Chinese tariff, or the United States tariff on Chinese EVs at over 100%. Because look at what GM is doing. Instead of doing good business, like we saying standing on business, like we asked Boeing to do. Oh, you had all these record profits. You're making all this money, and instead of doing that, making your vehicles safer, making them more affordable, making them more accessible, you made your planes and you made your cars less fit, and you took that money and pocketed it so you could blow up your stock prices. And we're seeing this happen in the West, or especially in the United States. And because we're so conditioned, I was growing up, I remember watching the stock market ticker, all the time. You see it when you're waking up in the morning to go to school. You'll have a quick moment and you go, oh, the stock market is up. That means the global economy, or the United States economy is up, or things are going well. We see all over 700,000 houseless people here. You go to China, you don't hear about homelessness. We posted this earlier. Japan and Korea and China are not, and Vietnam and Singapore, they're not in 2050. You just live in the United States.
Yeah, no, that's it. Everything here is a bit of a hustle. It's it's not good business. It's quick business. It's slick business.
It's
Um,
exploitation.
yeah,
I mean, essentially, that's what it is. You're strong arming people and you're exploiting them. You're making a few people rich while the rest of your country suffers. And this is essentially what's going on in Congo and the Sudan and
and
what was
Ukraine,
happening in Niger and Ukraine. Yeah.
and Ukraine. I just want to say in closing, it's important to note once again, this very day, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has said again, we can have peace tomorrow. We can have peace tomorrow, so long as Ukraine goes back to their borders and don't contest any place where Russia is. We can end this war right now, but you won't because your Western handlers need the gravy train. I mean, this is the literal translation of what he said because that's what this is. This is all just a racket to keep American arms selling, to keep German arms selling, British arms selling. You have to sell these things for these companies to be profitable, right? And that's what that is. If the war ends, they're going to lose all of this money that's going to all of these weapons manufacturers, all of these weapon system manufacturing, right? That so you're looking at a war that's literally being carried on right now because it's good for the GDP. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
And
dollars
BlackRock.
over human beings, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And yeah,
absolutely.
which bought huge swaths. I mean, most of Ukraine. These BlackRock guys was like, oh yeah, we about to get in on this infinite money glitch. Get these great farmland. Maybe we can get some rare earth minerals out of this thing. And
As Lindsey Graham mentioned, $12 trillion worth of, you know,
they had all that money in Afghanistan too. Remember, they thought they
right,
could play that little game.
right, and they lost that, right, but that was the bet because again, Afghanistan is a nation with incredible rare earth mineral wealth, right, and so long as you can control the country, you can extract that mineral wealth. Well, they couldn't control the country, right? But Ukraine, they feel like they can control, and BlackRock owns more land in Ukraine than the Russians do right now, and they never fired a shot. They just kept the bullets pointed at Zelensky and said, "If you don't pay us, we'll let him shoot."
Oof. Yeah, a lot of great information today. A lot of tough stuff going on. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Player FM. You see, I'm getting it now. I'm starting to get it. I want to show some love to our Patreons. You can be a Patreon too and get one of these little fancy shirts. Yeah, we making new material. Oh, we both got them.
Oh, we doubled
Double
up.
Trump
Oh,
twins. Can you figure out who is who? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's show them some love. No Ground, Robbie, Paula, Lissa, Lauren, Suzette, and Dennis. Much love to y'all. Follow us on Instagram at Inner City Left. Any final thoughts for today, my friend?
Man, those of you that can enjoy your life, live it.
We
Live it
alive.
Friday.
Hopefully,
Somewhere.
we'll stay alive this weekend and watch some fights and stuff like that, and we'll have a good time. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city love.